Good morning. You're listening to the BLAINESWORLD podcast. And as you may know, we can now be seen on Facebook Live, YouTube, LinkedIn, a whole bunch of other places as well. And I'm here now in my lowly studio in downtown Fairview, North Carolina, speaking to a good friend of mine, the infamous Rodney Smith. Welcome aboard, Rodney.
Infamous. Well,
Infamous.
thank you. Infamous.
Okay,
It's a good
infamous.
start.
And Rodney already did. You waved to all your fans and friends who are watching this. But I should actually thank you for being on board because it's the first time you've actually been on the podcast. When I had the
Correct.
radio show, I think you set the record. I think you were on 73 or 74 times. It was,
At least 73 times. Yeah.
So we'll have to try to get you to do that with the podcast as
Okay.
well. But Rodney, the first question I always ask, and I kind of know a little bit about your background, for people who haven't seen the podcast yet or heard it, I'm always curious about how people kind of got into what they're doing. And I think,
Okay.
if my memory corrects me, sir, if memory serves me correctly, you grew up like me on Long Island. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Middle of Long Island, Nassau County, Old Westbury, Roslyn Heights kid. Yeah.
And when you were growing up there, I think, was it Roosevelt also? That was the area? Roosevelt?
No. I was mostly middle of Long Island. So the Old Westbury and Roslyn Heights
Oh,
area, sometime in, let's see, Hicksville. But,
okay.
and,
Well, that was
yeah.
it. I forgot. You were on the good side of the tracks, the Roslyn, side.
Yeah, not so bad. Not so bad.
Exactly. I
I got
never,
lucky. I got
I
a good
never
look at
got to there. But
Yeah.
Rodney, when you were a kid then growing up on Long Island, did you always know you wanted to be this? I'm trying to describe you in 25 words or less. This entrepreneur, director, actor, producer, comedian, all these different kinds of things. Did you always know you wanted to be in entertainment?
No, I really just wanted to be a kid. I don't know. I didn't really have any like crazy aspirations when I was a kid that I can remember that was any different than any other kid. I wanted to play baseball or be a fireman or something to that effect. But by the time I got through high school, I had a love for English and writing. And I wanted to be an English professor, and I went to school for that. Though I never became that. That's kind of the direction. And though I never actually, got my bachelor's degree and became a teacher, I did continue my love for writing and teaching. And so yeah, writing kind of came out of that. Did stand-up comedy for a while and other things, but it was always about storytelling, I think. So when I finally discovered theater in my 40s, it just seemed like a perfect fit, I guess.
And that's when I think I first met you. I
Mhm.
heard you had been a stand-up comedian. I never saw you per se as stand-up,
You didn't
but
miss anything. I was terrible. I was terrible.
I know I don't think so. And I always get to
No, it
take
was
that.
so bad. I actually was so bad then, just so I can tell entertaining stories about how bad I was. Only
You say
reason I
that,
did.
but no, I always get a kick out of seeing you as MC and on stage. But the
Hmm.
first time I ever saw you, I was so impressed. I was at it was 35 Below, I think it was, and you were
Okay.
in this four-person play. What was the play again?
Neighbors, probably.
Neighbors. Oh, it just blew
Yeah.
me away. I had never seen you before. First time I had seen you in the area, and
Oh,
see
right on.
this guy. And was that the first thing you were in the Asheville area, or you'd been in some of the
No,
stuff?
no, I had done some work with the Magnetic Theater. Steve Samuels in the Magnetic Theater, probably the year or two before that, because that's where I met Steph Hickman Beckman, who was really just starting up Different Strokes at the time, and that was one of the first couple of year shows for Different Strokes. So she tapped me, and my ex-wife actually, and I were both in that show together.
And it was just
Um,
such a good show. Just really
yeah,
enjoyed it. So
yeah.
then I became kind of a Rodney Smith fan, or called me a groupie. But I think
Oh, you're sweet.
no, but everything you were in then, either directing or producing or getting involved in, I always try to see. And the
I
content of
appreciate it.
it is that anything I've ever seen you involved in, I've enjoyed, which is kind of cool.
Thank you.
Like another one I remember, and I just thought it was a lot of fun. It was a Table Six, and you wrote that. Was that it?
That was my first play. It was a one-act play. It was the first thing I ever wrote and directed. Yeah,
Okay.
it was for
And
the
then
Fringe Fest. Yeah.
And then you took it, which is kind of cool. You took it from being a one-act play. You expanded it a little bit. Is that correct?
Well, weirdly, it was written to be a three-act play to start with, and I kind of fancied myself Neil Simon and wanting to write one of those three stories all at the same, hotel suite kind of a plaza suite kind of a thing. And so that was one of three stories that was going to take place at this table. at a restaurant over the course of one weekend. But Steph Hickson Beckman was asked to put something up for the Fringe Festival as a representation of her theater company at the time, and she thought this might be a really good piece to go, just as the 1/3 of this show is a one-act play. So we did it. And then when I sat down to write the next piece of that, I wound up writing what would become an entirely different full-length play called Full Tilt Boogie at the Big Bang Diner. It became this silly, wonderful superhero based play that takes place at the same table at the restaurant that Table 6 took place at.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So that was going to be part 2, but then you said it became.
Yeah, it just got a life of its own and became a full-length play by itself. And that became my first really full-length play.
And that was just so much fun too. I saw that at, I guess it was a Magnetic.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it completely surprised me. I had like, which is cool. I had like no expectations of it, and it just kind of took me by surprise, but a fun kind of thing as well. When you write, what do you like writing best? Comedy?
Yeah, I think so. I have written things that weren't tremendous. I did Night of the Living Dead, the Redux. I did the adaptation of that for the stage, and that was pretty serious. And I did a serious piece for an anthology show called The Horror Show. But I think I prefer writing. That seems to be what comes more naturally to me. I think I like my tragedy wrapped in a punchline, I guess.
Well, to give you a compliment about Night of the Living Dead, that was another one also that completely surprised me. In that, I have to be honest with you, I have like less than any interest in zombies, so I'm thinking, why am I going to see this? I saw it because you were directing it, but boy, was I taken away by that. That was so much, it was fun too. It was I just thought it was a terrific production. Did you have fun with it?
Yeah, we had a really great cast for that show, and I remember it fondly. And we thought it was interesting to, instead of telling the zombie story, to tell the story of the people trapped in the house. And just, if 5 people who had to come together to save their lives couldn't get to it because their own BS kept them in, I thought that was an interesting story to tell.
And just even as to describe it, I can see it in front of my eyes. Just remember that. It was just such a terrific production of it. And
Thank
that's
you.
like another thing that I think you do particularly well is you cast well, because anything I've seen that you've been involved in, I'll say to myself, these people fit in that part, Is that tough for you casting a play?
No, it is, people have patted me on the back for different things about my plays, and I will always defer to my one true talent, which is bringing a really good group of people together with the right material. Because everything that everybody has ever loved about a show that I've directed, some of it has to land on the cast that I brought together. Because take people like, Darren Marshall or Sonia D'Andrea, who will take what I wrote and what I directed and then kick it up a notch or come up with their own ideas. And it's that kind of very fun family collaboration that has a tendency to make my shows a lot of fun. I'll take what credit's due. I wrote it, I pointed at people and said do things, but I think what I do really well is bring the right group of people together for a show.
Because it's funny you say that, because I'll oftentimes watch a show, and that's like really important to me. I'll say, like, even if I don't love the show, if it's cast well or the cast is good, I'll find something to enjoy about it,
Well, it's like you say, what makes a great sandwich? It's the bread. It's not what you put in, it's the bread. So
yeah, we've talked
if we
about
can go ahead and put together a really solid bread of a show, then you can almost forgive sometimes what you might not be interested in, like zombies.
Have you seen that happen? That you've taken a show that was only fair or okay, and kind of brought it together because of the cast?
If I say that, then I'm shooting myself in the foot, because 90% of the stuff that you've seen is I've written it myself. So
Well, no, I'll give you another compliment. Again, I kind of follow you around. I don't mean to badmouth it, so I'll just mention in passing. Is the play you did for a college, you were directing for a local college?
Marisol, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't enjoy that play at all, very frankly, but I liked how you put it together. And again, you had a good cast with it, but the show, didn't do anything for me,
That was one of the few things that I directed but didn't write. And I've been and I have to admit, to this day, I never felt like we fully understood that show and got what it needed.
Well,
Uh,
that was the thing, I guess. I had no idea what it's about, but it's just I was.
we had some idea, but I don't know that we nailed it perfectly. But I think we had a good time with it and did a good job. It was a really great experience for me to work with college students and work in a little bit more of an academic theater environment than a for-profit or for audience alone theater experience. So it was a growing experience for me.
One of the
But
cool
I generally, most of the work, I've directed Jamie Ridenhour's work.
right.
He wrote some pieces that I really had pleasure. But we also are seem to always be very simpatico about, like, when he writes something down on the page, I can kind of see what he's talking about. So that was nice to have that kind of collaboration, even on a writer's level, on other people's work.
One of the cool things I think you do, Rodney, is the fact that you've been involved with several of the local theaters. And let's talk about one, I don't know if it's the first time you've been involved in, maybe first time directing, but you're currently directing Three Musketeers. Is that correct?
For Montford Park, yeah.
And was that the first time you directed for Montford?
It is. It is. Ironically, the first show I ever did in Asheville was with Montford Park Players, and I had worked on a bunch of shows with them years ago, but this is the first time I've directed a show for them. Yeah.
So what, you had been in a play there at Montford?
Oh yeah, my very first play was my daughter got on the ensemble for A Christmas Carol, well over a decade ago, and Martin Cohn was directing, and they lost somewhere during their production, the person who was going to play the Christmas of yet to come, the Christmas future, they had to replace that person, and they asked me to do it, and I kind of felt like, oh, you wear a giant dark costume and you stand and you point. How bad could I be at this? So I took the job because I was going to be taking my kid to rehearsals and the shows anyway. And then they lost or had to replace the person who played Fezziwig in that show. And they asked me if I could do it. And I just had a ball doing it. And then after that, a couple of months later, I wound up taking Lysistrata. I played Cleonike and Lysistrata for them, Christy DeVille, who's doing this dance choreography for my current Three Musketeers. She was directing Lysistrata and asked me to play Cleonike in that. And I just, from there, those were both at Montford, and then got picked up by a couple other theater companies. And the rest
were those the first shows you had actually acted in
yeah.
the Asheville area, or even anywhere?
Period. First acting I'd ever done, period. Yeah.
Well, the question is then, Rodney, I ask a lot of actors / directors, do you have a preference, acting or directing?
Directing. I prefer to write and direct. And I've enjoyed acting, and there are a couple of things that I've done that I would absolutely do again in a heartbeat. Steve Samuels and I did a 2-person show years ago called Evening the Score. If we ever got a chance to restage that, I would do it in a heartbeat. But the idea of acting doesn't appeal to me. I hate learning lines.
I was just going to say, well, fast up, the truth comes out, and
Yeah.
directors will tell me that, except you have to memorize every part, but you don't have to memorize it, but you have to know every part.
Right.
But I don't know if you've seen it, Rodney. All of a sudden, because of COVID and some other stuff, a couple of directors we both know have had to actually go on stage, when somebody got sick, so.
I may be on stage this weekend myself.
Have you ever had to do that?
I might be doing it this Saturday. We'll see what happens.
Oh, really? Somebody sick? You don't have to tell me who yet, but somebody
Yeah,
sick.
we had one person sick on staff. So we've got replacements, or I should say understudies, stand-ins for the weekend. But one night I will probably have to stand in for one of our actors. And I'm not even upset about that. I'm kind of looking forward to it in some weird way.
Because the thing about, of course, local theater is that very rarely do you have understudies. But what's amazing to me, Rodney, is that how many times shows go on and how few shows get canceled. In other words, except at Montford, excepting for the weather, I don't think I've ever seen shows in the area get canceled. It's amazing that they managed to go on.
Yeah, and especially with COVID, I hear this is a secondhand. I don't know if this is true, but I've heard on more than one occasion that Unto These Hills some time ago wound up having to cancel a couple of shows because of a COVID breakout in their cast. But no, you don't hear of it an awful lot. We're kind of fortunate.
Yeah, or again, the director will step in at last minute,
Yeah.
in your spare time. So
Yeah,
what?
and we have what the cast of Three Musketeers is somewhere around 30 people cast and crew. So if we, all it would take is two of the wrong people to be that there would, and it's not even that there aren't talented people in
Right.
town. There are wonderfully talented people who would normally be able to step in, but this show, like, take any of the Musketeers or
I was
D'Artagnan
going
or
to
a
say
couple
that.
of the
Yeah.
other major characters, it's not just getting their lines and their blocking. They've gone through many hours of fight choreography with bunches of other people. We just couldn't get somebody back up on stage in a week, I think, save maybe the people who did the fight choreography.
Who's your fight choreographer?
Deanna Brain Smith and her husband Brian, and Scott Keel has also been on the fight team. And then John Robinson, who is also Athos of the play. He's a fight captain, as well as Jared Schultz, who just came off of his run being the fight choreographer and Robin Hood in Robin Hood. So a pleasure to have him as part
By
of
the
the
way,
team.
did you get to see Robin Hood?
I didn't,
He
unfortunately.
was terrific. The show was
Yeah,
terrific too.
yeah.
But talk a little bit then for the folks, believe it or not, who don't know Three Musketeers, and there are some
Oh,
people, I guess, who don't. I'll put you on the spot. 25 words or less, or whatever it takes you. What's the Reader's Digest version?
the Reader's Digest of just the story itself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the story famously, I'm not gonna get 25 words or less, Blake. I promise you. I'll try to say it in as little time, but
Okay.
written by Alexander Dumas, story of really a young farm lad named D'Artagnan who has dreams to be in the King's Musketeers, the famous French King's Musketeers, and in going to France to become a musketeer, gets embroiled in a plot by the state to overthrow the king. And then he, along with the famous Three Musketeers, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, the four of them rush off to save the Queen and the Duke of Buckingham, and intrigue and romance and betrayal and swashbuckling in between.
Who chose that play for Montfort?
I don't know who, I have to admit, I don't know who was completely on the board for at the time when they chose the plays. I do know that I have thought of directing something for Montfort for many, many years, but I never felt that I had the chops to direct Shakespeare. I don't feel comfortable with a lot of the levels of Shakespeare that I feel I don't feel like I could respect Shakespeare, so I decided to stay away from it as a director. So when they announced the Three Musketeers, this has always been one of my favorite stories. So I jumped all over it, and they were very nice of it enough to say yes. So
One of the things too I love about Montfort is the fact they've gone away somewhat from just Shakespeare.
yeah, they're definitely expanding to classics and other adaptations.
And I really like it because I'm not the world's biggest Shakespeare buff, but I'm anxious to see, the Three Musketeers. And talk about then the fact too that I met with you, we had lunch several months ago, and boy, you've been thinking about this one for a long time. It's
Yes.
people should realize that to become a director isn't just a 1 week thing. Talk about the process in terms of you first getting hired to do it and then putting together. How long did it take, and what are the steps?
Oh gosh. Well, this one moved fast and long at the same time in the sense of from the as soon as I don't think I finished reading the script. And so it was posted online. I reached out to John Russell over at the theater to see if he would send me a copy so I could decide to put in for it. I read it as soon as he sent it to me, which was within, so all of that happened within 3 hours. I saw that it was posted and read the play within 3 hours. Halfway through reading the play, I had already, because I'd worked with so many great people in town, and knowing that Deanna Brain Smith had just come off of doing some amazing fight choreography in Living Dead in Denmark last year over at Montfort, and it was such a great show. And I'm reading this and I'm going, wow, we could do the same thing with the Three Musketeers. And I started thinking about, honestly, who I wanted to cast. It was before I even finished it. I knew that I wanted Brooks Wallace for D'Artagnan. I knew I wanted Sonia D'Andrea for Lady de Winter. I knew I wanted Darren Marshall to play Treville. I knew these things. So I was so blessed that when I put out for this show to audition for it, which blessedly they allowed me to put out auditions for the show before the two shows that come before me. So normally
Right.
auditions would happen for the next show, but they allowed me to do it early because I wanted to tack another 5 weeks of rehearsal time onto our normal 5 weeks for fight and dance choreography and kind of do all of that work. So I was able to get the entire cast and crew for this show put into play, and blessedly, right down to Sandy McDaniel, who's our costumer, Jason Williams doing lighting direction, and Christy DeVille doing our dance choreography. All of these are people who are my dream team for the show, and they were all available, and they all said yes. So we got to put this show together very, very quickly, and lots of time to rehearse it and put it together.
Well, it's funny you say that because I remember, again, when we met several months ago, I was so impressed that you already had the show. It was like a long time before the show was actually going on.
Yeah.
And you had it all in your mind, and you were rock and rolling on it that far
Yeah.
in advance.
Yeah, I had a pretty solid vision of this one right from the get-go, and then knowing who I was going to get to work with and being able to coordinate and collaborate with them months in advance, even the ideas that I had when I first looked at the script became augmented by this family of ideas. And like, maybe it's a slight spoiler alert, we have a wonderful dance number in the middle of the play, but the script just calls for the ball in the background, and we were able to decide to augment that. Or there are other scenes where it's like, oh, and then these two people tangle for a second and suddenly somebody's disarmed, and we felt like, well, we can tell more of a story here. So we got a chance to really sit with what was the best we can get out of the material.
And even as you say it, I'm kind of smiling because when you talk about dance, the choreographer is
Christy DeVille.
And anytime I see anything she does, it's just a lot of fun, especially at Montford. In
Yeah.
a little play, you'll start seeing this elaborate dance, and they're all kind of fun. And so this
Yeah.
is the same kind of thing.
Yeah, she and I go, yes, very much so. And she and I have a wonderful history together because, like I said, she wound up casting me in my first really big role as Lysistrata. And during that time, she was also doing stuff that I was composing music for. So anytime one of us needed something from the other, we were always just Johnny on the spot for it. In fact, that play at Marisol that I did at Warren Wilson, there's a scene where there's a brother and sister who get into a fight on the stage, and I wanted it to be brutal but fun. And so I asked Chrissy to come in and choreograph my fight scene like a dance number. And it really worked for the show. So we've just been two people who've always been able to say, hey, I just need this thing. And then the other one brings back to the other greater than any expectation we could have possibly had for it. So
For folks who don't realize how long and in some respects arduous the process is, they'll go to see Montford. And again, the dates of the show, Ronnie, you're ready to run. When is the dates at Montford?
we opened last weekend, the 19th, and we run through the 17th of September. I believe that's right. That's hold on, I can look at the actual calendar. It's a 5-week run, and as of this upcoming weekend, we have 4 weeks left. So that is, 17th would be the last evening. So
And what I want folks to realize, and hopefully support this as well, is how much extra time you put into it. So in terms of before the run began last week, how many weeks were you in rehearsal?
5 weeks, and then other sort of specialty fight rehearsals and dance calls.
And when you talk about rehearsal, how often are you rehearsing?
4 nights a week.
4 nights a week. And that's
Or Monday through Thursday. And normally when you have a rehearsal, it's, all right, we'll work this scene, or then we'll work the next scene. And because of what the show had going on, we could be rehearsing a scene on this side of the stage while a fight call was going on that side of the stage while they were dancing in the parking lot. So every rehearsal was like rehearsing 3 shows.
Is this the most number of people you've ever worked with in one show?
Yes. Yeah, this is the biggest show I've ever done, period.
And is this also the first time you've ever done a show with sword fighting?
Yes.
Okay, so a lot of exciting stuff.
A lot of moving parts.
Yeah, but people should realize too is that, and you can talk a little bit about this, Rodney, is that you certainly can't beat the price for this show. Is that correct?
We paying you to
No,
come
no.
see the show would be about the only way we could beat this price. But
No, talk
yeah,
about it.
it's Montfort has been it's free theater. It's community theater. You can come and you can there's concessions there, and we do pass around a hat at intermission. But it's a not for profit. We make they I should say make their money through donations and some sponsorships. This show is being sponsored by Parsec Financial and the Matt and Molly team with Keller Williams. We're very pleased to have them sponsoring this show in particular. But outside of that, it's very much pay what we're worth. You know, you can I have to admit, I don't remember how much they are, but you can rent chairs there, or you can bring your own chairs, and you can buy beer and wine, or you can bring your own beer and wine.
And like you said, the nice thing too, a lot of people make it a picnic. You know, they come an
Yeah,
hour before the show and just picnics. Great
yeah,
experience. And
a lot of fun.
all you gotta do is hope for good weather. You know,
Yes, that's all you have to do. We sadly got rained out one of our shows this opening weekend.
yeah. John told me I think last year they had less than like 5% of performances canceled. You know, because of the weather. So
Right.
that's the only drawback. But bring an umbrella too in case it starts raining. But you'll have a good time.
Yeah, and we'll still perform in light rain, you know, as long as it's not creating dangerous conditions or it's just no fun anymore. But you know, kind of I guess what we call baseball rules. You know, we have even in the past said, all right, we're going to take a 15-minute break to see if this passes. You know, we'll see what happens.
Well, Ronnie, yeah, I went. I forgot the show. I think it was last year, but it was the heaviest rain I've ever seen, and I can't believe they did the whole show. You know, John gave you the option of people if you want to perform. And I'm telling you, people were sliding on the stage. They were, you know, really getting around, but they did the whole show to their credit. You know, so
Yeah,
show must go
yeah.
on.
We can't do that. That's we had to come to grips with that there's so much action, and when you're dealing with sword fights, you know, fine, they're staged swords. You're probably not going to impale and kill somebody with it. It's still really dangerous, and a lot of the footworks and the choreography. Yeah, if that stage gets really wet, we have to kind of put the brakes on the show.
And talk
It is
about
what it
after
is.
this show, Three Musketeers is in September. You all of a sudden have what, like a week free time because then you go right into another show. The one at
That's
Phil.
close to the truth. I have a little bit more than a week, but when you include rewrites and a couple other things that we need for planning, yeah, I'm going to go into Santa Claus Conquers the Martians.
And talk about that show, Ronnie. What's the idea behind that one?
this is this show has been on hold for I guess going on 3 years now, 2 or 3 years now. It was supposed to be the replacement show for the Bernstein show at the Magnetic Theater, and we were slated to go with it when COVID shut everything down. And in those couple of years, I have parted ways with the Magnetic Theater, but we're going to put the show up now at Attic Salt Theater Company with Jeff Cadney is his company, Attic Salt. So yeah, it's a ridiculous adaptation of a terrible movie made in 1968 with Pia Zadora, a low budget film that, if you've ever seen the movie Nightmare Before Christmas,
Right. Okay.
believe it or not, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, a B movie made in 1968, is the exact same plot. Where basically Mars decides children are unhappy, we need a Santa Claus, so we're going to go ahead and kidnap Santa and bring him to Mars and make Mars a happy place. But there's somebody who doesn't want Mars to change. So terrible movie that fell into the public domain very quickly. And a friend of mine had always had dreams of readapting that into a new screenplay. And I always thought it an interesting idea, so I adapted it into a really ridiculous comedy that if you ever seen the Bernstein shows that the Magnetic Theater put on, this was the show that was supposed to replace it. So it was that same type of kind of silly, ribald humor. However, over the course of the last couple of years, we're looking to kind of get it in and rewrite and tone down some of the more silly, raunchy humor and replace it with actually clever, funny stuff.
Now, has this show ever been put on anywhere else?
Not this version of it. This is my original adaptation, but others have adapted this movie into like a B movie of a stage play of the show. So not an original idea, but it is an original script.
Now, you seem to enjoy doing that, taking an idea, I guess, and then adapting it for the stage or a new version. Do you enjoy that?
This is the second time I've done
Right,
it.
exactly.
And I did it for different reasons. The Night of the Living Dead. Well, I guess I did it for the same reason. Both stories were in the public domain, so I was allowed to do it. But Night of the Living Dead was because I really thought there was an interesting story to tell that the original film just didn't tell. So I don't really believe. I never looked at Night of the Living Dead as an adaptation of the film so much as a retelling of the same story. Whereas the Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, I wanted to write the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version of this show. And so that's kind of how it came about. So making fun of bad B movies just struck me as a fun idea.
Now, one of the things I think you also do well is you've done, I know, lots of collaborative efforts, in your comedy and some of the other stuff you used to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Do you prefer that, or do you prefer writing by yourself?
Both have their merits. I think with the right people involved, I'm a pretty solitary writer, but I like to edit and evolve in a group. So, like when I was doing a lot of work with the Super Happy group
Right.
with Adam Arthur and Jeff and Jill, and we were all putting that kind of stuff together. I liked the writing room for coming up with ideas, but I was the guy who was like, great, let me latch onto this idea. Let me go home and write it. And then when I come back, let's all of us tear it apart. Let's figure out how to make it better. But I don't necessarily do well with being put on the spot and trying to figure out ideas with others. But once we have a place to start, I love working with a group of people who are adventurous or silly. So I think both have their merits. Most of my playwriting I do in solitary. I will write an entire play like in an afternoon. And don't get me wrong, it's not the version of the play that's going to end up. And then I'll spend months editing it and going back because I will just vomit everything out into a page. But once I get some semblance of a script that I like, then I start to send it out to everybody whose opinion I respect. We'll do table reads, and that's when I like the collaborative process of bringing everybody's talent to bear on whatever I've started.
When you write, are you a kind of guy who just sits down for 2 hours every morning and just writes, or do you write
No,
when you feel
no,
motivated?
I wish I was disciplined. I'm a terribly undisciplined writer. Um, Actually, the best way to get me to write anything is to have a deadline. Either I have to be tremendously passionate about it or I have to have a deadline. Full Tilt Boogie at the Big Bang Diner was something that I really was a script I was excited about. And so every time I had a new idea, I would jot it down. And when I got home from work, I'd want to sit down and work on it and work it out. Um, whereas, something like Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, while I think it's a good show, that was more of I need to get it done so it's ready by Christmas. So that was more of a just sit down and vomit it all out and then edit it and punch it up and edit it until it was something that worked. Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, just by its title, clearly it's not my life's work. This is not my swan song that I'm putting my.
And clearly, it's not a great dramatic piece we're going to see when we come to
No,
that.
no, it's not going to be dramatic at all.
And so, to recap, Rodney, let's talk about the three things here. One is the play currently underway. We're going to encourage people to see. Want to give
Yes,
me the information on that again?
Yeah, Three Musketeers, and originally a novel written by Alexandre Dumas, and this play adaptation by Catherine Bush, and it opened this past month on the 19th, and will continue through September 17th, Monday through Sunday at 7:30 at the Hazel Robinson Amphitheater in
Friday to Sunday.
I'm sorry, I did say Friday through Sunday. Sorry, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There is not a final Sunday show, so
Okay,
it's
good to know.
so yeah, the 18th would be the final Sunday,
Okay.
and this part. So
Again,
7:30 every night. Shows are free, but please pay what you're worth. What you think we're worth.
definitely you're going to have a good time. And then
Yeah.
shortly thereafter, we move into Attic Salt. and
Yeah.
that the dates of that, and
I don't actually have,
Okay.
we've not scheduled, it's going to start in late November and run through the first couple of weeks of December, probably right up to the week before Christmas. But we haven't set those dates yet.
okay. So certainly you don't have a lot of time off, between shows.
No,
It doesn't look like.
no, no.
And moving forward, Rodney, any grandiose plans or anything you can share with your many fans and friends after Santa Claus? Do we have anything in the
I
works?
think I would like to go back to writing. Actually putting some new stuff together. There's some things in my personal life that have just finally sort of settled down and are going to kind of allow me to be creative again. So yeah, I just want to get through the end of this year and then maybe take some time to see what other things I might have to add to the universe. I am hoping I put in to direct a couple of shows for a couple of theaters next year. I won't say it out loud right now so as not to jinx it, but I promise you'll be one of the first to know if either of them says yes.
Okay, well,
But yeah,
good luck
I'd
with
really
that.
much like to keep directing, keep putting
And
shows together.
and to track Rodney Smith down, if folks want to find out about you or find out what you're into, what's the best bet?
Best bet is Facebook, really, just for public knowledge. I don't social media like a lot of people do. I'm there to promote whatever I've got going on, and occasionally some of my more ridiculous brain droppings. But it's a pretty public place, so yeah, just look me up on Facebook, and or Instagram is Tempest Fugit Asheville. And other than that, come out to see us at Montfort. I'm usually at the shows, and feel free to walk up and say hi.
Okay, and Rodney, I'd like to thank you for being my guest on the Blaine's World podcast, and I look forward
I'm
to
always
seeing
happy to
you.
meet you.
I'll look forward to seeing you at Three Musketeers and Santa Claus and wherever else you're involved in or doing. You do good work, Rodney. A
And
pleasure.
hopefully at a restaurant near you. We can
Okay,
just split a pastrami sandwich.
sounds good, buddy. Okay, be well.
You too.